Hi guys, and welcome back to DTTV. Here we're going to talk about bottom bait rigs and what I like to use. Going to keep things fairly simple for you because that's how my fishing really goes about. I've only really got two bottom bait rigs that I really use on and off, and the first one of these I'll bring up now for you. A typical setup for me. If we look at the actual rig and its components, always keep my rigs fairly short, and that for a good reason. I did a hell of a lot of close quarter fishing in my early days, and learnt a hell of a lot from margin fishing, and basically found that short rigs really aided me really well in getting quick bites. Used to do a hell of a lot of fishing on gravel pits, and found that the shorter the rigs I was fishing, the more my likelihood of getting a take increased, and that's really my reason for fishing them a hell of a lot. I'll even actually fish a short rig in silt but with a lighter lead. So anyway, let's have a little look at the setup that I'm using. A typical setup would be for me, I like using a 15mm bait a lot. The reason for that is that I like using smaller hooks, because generally the smaller the hook, the sharper the hook point generally tends to be. Looking at this particular setup, all I've got here is a 15mm hook bait, a size 10 or 8 quarter wide gape, and a short 4 to 5 inch, and in this case a Suffix Camo Fusion hook link. Onto that we've got a small uni-link swivel with obviously the large rings. Following on from that, we've got an ESP size 11 clip lead, a 3-ounce distance lead, and one thing that I will show you that I do different to a lot of people is that I use a small split ring. These ones are made by Gardner, they're quite new and they've just come out recently. What I do is I literally cut the swivel off of the lead and replace it with one of these split rings. And my reason for that is that I've found over the years, if you tend to use a swivel that they come in as they're manufactured, it gives the lead a hell of a lot more movement. And what I try to achieve is try and create the impression that you still have a fixed lead on the bottom but without a lot of movement, and I found that a swivel tends to give it a bit too much movement, so that's why my reasons for that. And also I found it a little bit more streamlined once it's being cast out, so if you're doing extreme distances, i.e. 100 plus, I mean for example at the minute I'm fishing 110 yards at Freyning here, I've really found these just give you those extra few yards, so that's a good little tip of mine I suppose. And then going really on to the rest of the business then, probably like a lot of anglers out there, you know, there's only one product for me and that's lead core. I use ESP's £45, which I'm sure a lot of you have all seen. I've used this now for, it must be 10 years. Great product, I've never had it go on me, and will continue to use it until perhaps they do a different colour or whatever. Really, I don't splice like a lot of guys do with the needle knot that's very popular these days. I literally just do loop to loop on both ends. I find that very easy for my own fishing. The reason for that is if I want to swap over to a chod rig, which is the other pop-up rig that I use, I find it very quick and easy. I haven't got to type loads more rigs, loads more lead cores. It just makes it a lot more easier. Really, moving on from that, that's a typical rig for me. I think my only other variation that I use is probably on weedy waters, or for instance like we've got here, crayfish water, is that I'll use a hook link straight the way through without any of the skin pulled back. At the minute I'm using the Cam Fusion from Suffix. My reason for that is one, it's very stiff, and secondly there's a lot of Canadian pondweed in this lake, and I think this material best represents it in terms of looks and in terms of feel on the bottom of the lake. I think it makes it very hard for the fish to distinguish. There was a long time ago and I used to use a lot of braid, but over the years of doing a lot of quite close quarter fishing, I generally found that the fish were getting away with so much using braided hook links. I'm not saying they don't work, but I found my conversion rate from takes has really upped that much more by using short, semi-stiff hook links. Really moving on from that, the only other alteration I would say is to change my hook link with the time of year. Getting into sort of winter time, I think probably this stems from my match fishing days, is that I will obviously bring down the hook link size, and in this case I'll be using maybe strip tees from ESP. Great little product, it's in 12 pounds, very low diameter, stiff once again the same as the Cam Fusion, but just gives you that a little bit more subtle approach when, you know, the winter months come, the smaller hook size is used and the smaller hook baits. And really that's about it for my main stable of bottom bait fishing. I wouldn't say I really deviate away from that much. The only alternative I might maybe use is that if I'm fishing heavy weed, you know, I might possibly lengthen the hook length and maybe use some foam nuggets to help bring the hook bait down. But apart from that, that's really all I use. I've caught a hell of a lot of fish on it. And I think that's the main thing with carp fishing, is that you make it as complicated as you want to make it. And I've always kept my approach very simple and concentrated on location and bait more than anything else. And obviously a sharp hook goes, you know, without saying. And really that's how I like to fish, and I will continue to do so. And really that's the way I like to look at my approach.